The Galactic Council chamber stood silent for the first time in centuries. The circular hall, once alive with the chatter of hundreds of species, was now a hollow echo of its former glory. Above the marble dais, the Council's emblem shimmered weakly, as if even the energy conduits had grown weary of sustaining the illusion of order. At the center, Chancellor Viral of the Keth Dominion shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His translucent carapace caught the dim light, refracting it across the domed ceiling. Before him, where once sat the delegation of Earth's representatives, there was now only emptiness. The human seats, 6 of them, had been removed entirely, their banners taken down. The humans had departed quietly, without ceremony, without farewell, without even a word of protest. They had simply left. At first, the Council had been relieved. Humanity had always been the most unpredictable member of the Galactic Order. Brilliant, chaotic, resourceful to the point of danger. Their arrival 2 centuries ago had reshaped the balance of power, dragging the stagnant Council into an age of innovation and expansion. But with their ingenuity came defiance. They questioned the Council's decrees, challenged the long-held monopolies of the elder races, and refused to bow to anyone's authority. To many of the older species, the humans were a necessary evil, a spark that burned too hot to be comfortable. So when they withdrew, when every human outpost, colony, and fleet vanished from known space in a coordinated retreat, the Council didn't know how to react. For the first few cycles they celebrated. Trade monopolies returned to alien hands, Council mandates went unchallenged, and the usual power games resumed. Yet as the years passed, something began to feel off. It started small missing shipments of human-made tech, unexplainable communication dead zones, subtle fluctuations in the energy grid. Then the failures spread. The Council's fleets, which had once relied on human engineers for maintenance, began to suffer system errors. The automated logistic systems that tracked planetary resources collapsed. Terraforming operations stalled without human algorithms to regulate the biospheres. And still, the humans remained silent. No messages, no transmissions, not even the faint whisper of a distress call. It was as if the entire species had vanished behind a veil. Chancellor Viral tapped a claw on the edge of the council table. Across from him sat Archon Drell of the Starry Hives, her chitin armor shimmering like oil. "We can no longer ignore this," she hissed. "The resource projections show a 43% decline in galactic output since the humans left. Our fleets cannot sustain this rate of decay. We must locate them. Locate them." As if that were possible. The humans had erased themselves so completely that not even the Council's most advanced tracking arrays could find a trace. Entire sectors where they once thrived now registered as barren. Stars that had hosted thriving colonies flickered as though the light itself recoiled from memory. Viral leaned back, his voice brittle. "You propose to find a species that does not wish to be found. Tell me, Archon, what will you say to them when you do?" Drell's mandibles clicked. "I will say that the galaxy needs them." From the shadows, another voice spoke, soft, measured and dangerous. "The galaxy always needed them. But we treated them as tools." All heads turned. The speaker was Councillor Rennies of the Varn, one of the few elder races who had once allied closely with humanity. His narrow form looked almost ghostly beneath the pale lights. "Do you remember," he continued, "when they first came among us? They offered to share their science, their medicine, their engines. They gave us faster ships, stronger materials, cures for diseases we thought eternal. And what did we give them in return?" No one answered. Rennies's tone hardened. "We gave them suspicion, restrictions, taxation and threats. We feared their potential, so we chained them with laws. Viral's mandibles twitched in irritation. They were reckless. They disrupted galactic balance. They weaponized nanite networks and opened black holes for mining operations. They nearly destabilized the rim systems. And they fixed them, Rennies countered. Do not forget that. When the rim collapsed, who built the containment fields? Who saved your dominion from extinction? The chamber fell into uneasy silence again. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the power conduits. Finally, Drell spoke again, quieter this time. Then perhaps we should find them not as rulers, but as petitioners. Viral scoffed. You would have us beg? Yes, Rennie said. If we must. The discussion ended inconclusively. As the delegates dispersed, the Chancellor lingered, staring at the empty seats where the humans once sat. He remembered the last council meeting they had attended. Ambassador Lewis, calm, polite, almost too polite, had stood before them and simply said, "The council no longer represents humanity's future. We wish you well." Then they had left. No threats, no ultimatums, no grand speeches. Just quiet departure. Now, decades later, their absence was an open wound. The galaxy was unraveling, and no one could stop it. On the edges of known space, far beyond the Council's reach, humanity watched. Hidden within the veil of a cloaked network of systems known as the Expanse, they had rebuilt their civilization. Not for war, not for conquest, but for survival. They had seen the Council's rot, the corruption buried beneath its politics, and had decided to leave before it consumed them. In the heart of the Expanse, Admiral Catherine Holt stood before a panoramic viewport. Her gaze fixed on the glittering sprawl of a human megacity orbiting a blue-white star. Below her, vast shipyards hummed with life. Thousands of vessels under construction, ranging from freighters to warships that dwarfed anything the Council had ever seen. "Status of the observation grid?" she asked. "Fully functional," replied a young officer beside her. "We're monitoring every major Council transmission. They're floundering. Energy shortages, trade collapses, unrest in 7 sectors. It's accelerating." Holt nodded slowly. "As predicted." The officer hesitated. "Do we intervene, ma'am? Help them, maybe. We could restore balance with minimal risk." Holt's eyes remained on the stars. "No, not yet. They made their choice." "But, Admiral." "Lieutenant," Holt interrupted softly. "Do you know why we left?" The young man faltered. "Because they didn't trust us." She shook her head. "Because we were becoming them. The same politics, the same arrogance. The Council taught us that power without restraint becomes tyranny. We needed to start over, to learn humility again." Silence hung in the air for a long moment. Then Holt turned away from the viewport. "Prepare the fleet for standby. If the Council falls apart, we'll be ready to pick up the pieces. But not before." Back in the galactic core, chaos spread like wildfire. Member worlds accused each other of sabotage. Entire sectors declared independence. The once unified Council had fractured into warring coalitions, each blaming the others for the decline. And through it all, whispers grew louder, rumors of the humans watching from the shadows, waiting, judging. Some said they had ascended to a higher plane. Others claimed they had built a secret empire beyond the rim. A few, the desperate ones, began to worship them as gods. Chancellor Viral sat alone in his private chamber, reviewing reports of collapsing systems. His aides had abandoned him. His fleets were grounded for lack of fuel. Even the automated defense grids were failing. In that quiet, he thought back to the early days of Alliance, when humans had come to the council as hopeful newcomers, eager to learn, eager to help. And how quickly they had been cast aside once their usefulness waned. He whispered to the empty room. "You left us to our fate, didn't you?" Far away, aboard a silent observation ship hidden in the void, a human AI monitored the transmission. Its processors flickered for a moment as it analyzed the Chancellor's words. Then, almost sadly, it replied into the dark, though no one could hear. "We didn't leave you, Chancellor. You let us go." The stars continued to burn, indifferent and eternal. Humanity waited in the shadows, patient as the galaxy began to reap what it had sown. 3 standard decades had passed since humanity's silent departure, and the Galactic Council was now a ghost of its former self. The great marble chamber that had once echoed with the voices of hundreds of civilizations now lay in ruins. The domed ceiling was cracked, one side of it collapsed by neglect and war. Power conduits hung from the walls like broken veins, flickering with dying light. The galaxy had turned in on itself. Across the stars, once mighty worlds burned. The Ice Rack Syndicate had enslaved half the northern rim, the Steri Hive had split into 3 factions, and the Keth Dominion was collapsing under rebellion. What had once been a unified galactic community was now a patchwork of warlords, struggling to hold together the remnants of civilization. Chancellor Viral was no longer Chancellor. The Council itself had dissolved 2 years prior after the great collapse of the central power grid. He now wondered what remained of the Council's homeworld, Oris Prime, a world of silent cities and rusting monuments. The air smelled of dust and decay. He had seen the reports, though he barely believed them. Human-made drones appearing in dying star systems, restoring energy grids and repairing infrastructure, then vanishing without contact. Some thought it was proof that humans still cared. Others feared it was only observation, silent judgment from a species that had outgrown them. Viral trudged through the ruins toward the old council chamber. He wasn't alone. Waiting for him near the shattered dais was Archon Drell of the Steri, her once pristine armor now dulled and scarred. "You came," Viral rasped. His voice was hoarse, brittle with age. She inclined her head. Someone had to. They stood together in silence, staring at the empty seats once reserved for the humans. Drell broke the stillness. "I received a transmission yesterday. Origin unknown. It was human." Viral's mandibles twitched. "You're certain?" "I am." It was brief. Simple message. It said, "When the galaxy remembers humility, we will return." And then it ended. Viral let out a long, shaking breath. "Humility," he murmured. "We forgot what that meant long ago." Drell turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. "Do you think they'll come back?" He looked up at the cracked ceiling, where once the Council's crest had glowed with power and pride. "They'll come back when we deserve them," he said quietly. "Not before." Far beyond Oris Prime, in the hidden systems of the Expanse, Admiral Catherine Holt watched the latest Council sector feeds. Fragmented distress calls filled the screen, pleas from worlds collapsing into chaos, from ships adrift without power, from people who had once called humanity naive. Around her, the command nexus thrummed with life. The Expanse had grown into a vast human civilization, 1,000 colonies united under a single principle: never again depend on those who seek to control through fear. Their fleets were vast but unseen, their technologies decades ahead of anything the Council once dreamed of. They had created a new order, one built not on dominance but on quiet strength. Commander Lin approached from the side. "Admiral, our long-range observers confirm that Oris Prime's infrastructure has completely failed. The planetary population is down to less than 1 million. They're starving." Holt's expression softened, though her tone remained firm. And the message? Delivered. We used the standard code. It's already spreading through their networks. Good. She turned to face the holographic display of the galaxy, a vast sprawl of fading lights and empty sectors. Now we wait. Lynn hesitated. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Granted. I know we left for the right reasons. But they're dying out there. Entire species that once thrived with our help. Do we just watch them fall? Holt was silent for a long time. The stars glittered in her eyes. When we gave them knowledge, they used it for control. When we offered peace, they forged weapons. When we built together, they built walls. We cannot save those who refuse to learn. But if they do learn, Lynn asked softly. Holt smiled faintly. Then they'll find us. In the following years, the message spread across the remnants of the galaxy like a whisper. First, no one believed it. But slowly, one by one, species began to change. The Ice Rack Syndicate collapsed under internal reformers who declared the old ways dead. The surviving hive queens of Stary met with the Varn colonies to rebuild trade on equal footing. And for the first time in living memory, there was peace. Fragile, uncertain, but real. Decades later, long after Viral and Drell had passed into history, a new gathering was called on Oris Prime. The rebuilt chamber was smaller, humbler, without banners or pomp. Representatives from 100 surviving civilizations sat together, not as rulers but as equals. At the center stood a single pedestal, bearing an empty seat, the same seat that once bore Earth's insignia. It had been placed there intentionally, in remembrance. The meeting began with quiet reflection. No grand speeches, no demands. Just silence. And in that silence, something changed. The air shimmered faintly like heat on the horizon. A hum filled the chamber, soft but growing stronger. The delegates turned as a figure appeared before them, not of flesh but of light. Human hologram. It was an older man, his uniform plain, his expression calm. When he spoke, his voice carried across the chamber like a soft wind. It has been 120 years since humanity's departure. We have watched. We have waited. And now we see a galaxy that remembers compassion. You have learned what power cannot teach, that unity cannot be forced. The delegates sat frozen. Some trembled. Others bowed their heads. The hologram continued. We will return, but not to rule. To share, to build, to heal. The council you once knew is gone. A new one will rise, born not of domination but understanding. Humanity will stand beside you again. As friends. The light flickered once, then faded, leaving only the echo of the man's words. Outside the chamber, as if in answer, the skies above Oris Prime lit up. Thousands of ships emerged from fold space, sleek silver vessels that shimmered like sunlight on water. Human ships. They moved in perfect formation, silent and beautiful, as if the stars themselves had come alive. The galaxy would never be the same again. On the surface, the new council stood beneath the radiant glow, watching the fleets descend. For the first time in generations there was no fear, only awe. Distantly, on the command bridge of the flagship Eidolon, Admiral Holt stood watching Oris Prime grow larger in the viewport. Her expression was calm, her voice soft as she spoke to her crew. Open the channels, she said. Let them know humanity has returned. And as the transmission spread across the stars, reaching every corner of the fractured galaxy, a single phrase marked the rebirth of an era. We left quietly once. Now we return, not as saviors but as equals. The stars seemed to brighten. The long night was finally ending. Humanity had come home.